Hello, everyone. Welcome to Rave RPG, the show where I get someone to go on a rant, talk about what they're obsessed about, their biggest passion in the tabletop role-playing RPG world. No, not just that. RPG covers video games. It could cover just role-playing, cosplay. There is so much in the community that has been branched off into little segments. And in the content creator world or in your home basement around, there's always someone that obsesses about that one thing. I want to know what it is. So send us your rant. 3 minutes, 30 minutes to rollmongers@gmail.com, and we'll see about putting your clip on the air in the show. But today, it is my very distinguished pleasure to return in a second interview sort of setting, Mr. Jefferson J. Thacker, and we are going to talk about crafting minis, assets for your tabletop RPG.
I'm confused, but hey.
Thanks for being on the show.
Oh no, it's good to be back. I really enjoy it. It's always good to get a chance to talk with you.
I appreciate that. So, I got a little bit of a meter here. Okay, there's interest, there's enjoy, there's passion, and then there's obsession.
I think I reached obsession with crafting for my games like a very long time ago. It's been an app. Like, what I love about the tabletop games has always been the opportunities that it actually brings, that you just can't mimic with computer games. And it's been real rough. 2 years of COVID have made that real rough for me because I don't get to indulge in it much. But like, even since I was like a baby little gamer, I was like tissue paper and cardboard boxes trying to make my dungeons on a old scavenged door that we're using as a table propped up on horse legs in a basement. And I just loved, like, this was a game setting where you made your props, you made your content, you painted your minis yourself, and you customized and improvised everything. And it was often early on due to needs of necessity that I got involved in crafting, because back in like the mid 90s, there wasn't really a lot of companies putting out a ton of bespoke stuff that we get to enjoy today. Like right now, there's so many companies that you can just go like Dungeons and Lasers and get like custom dungeon tiles, and pre-painted minis are everywhere. And there's like Etsy is just filled with like amazing GM screens and dice and stuff. But I've always enjoyed just sort of making these things myself, because I strongly believe that aesthetics and immersion are a humongous part of what can make a game fun. And so from the very earliest days, I've been like, well, what can I improvise? If I buy a poster board at Walmart and then I custom do the town out of this, and what about the creepy dungeon? And how do I turn sticks and alcohol and flocking into trees and stuff? And I've always been like the RPG player that's like really interested in the war game section and the train model section, just anything I can do to just enhance and up the experience that my players have at the table with something that you just can't get easily or quite the same at a digital table. I mean, Roll20 and Tabletop Simulator is really impressive, some of the stuff you can do on there. But like, when you are sitting down at the table and you see actual rolling hills and handcrafted trees and well-painted miniatures, and you're sitting inside of a tavern, like my game room is a hand-built tavern with sconce lighting and posters on the wall and draft beer coming out of like cold mugs. Like, I try to immerse my players into the world that they get to play in. And it's something that I think they appreciate. It's something that I appreciate doing. And it's always been part of the passion for what got me into role-playing in the first place.
Budget. It could come down to your budget, and you cannot be afraid to start, like you said, with I have a buddy that used to play at a coffee shop, and they would like salt and pepper shaker that stuff, you know, because they would constantly buy coffees, quietly play in a corner, and all they had were condiments to play with, just for the very basic of like, okay, perspective distance, here's the big bad, here are you guys, who's moving left, who's moving right, and like you said, it helps with the immersion. So would you say you're a grid man? You know, you want something physical to touch, and you want like as much detail on the map. You like let's talk about drawing on the grid. Or are you talking about no grid? You know, there's a floor, and I put my minis inside of walls, and there's.
I appreciate grids a lot, and so I build them into my terrain when I'm building terrain because it makes the gameplay faster. Though I'm not opposed to grabbing a measuring stick and the tape measure if that's the best way to approach it. But thankfully, there's lots of fun products out there now that makes that a lot easier. You can get like the flip map blanks from Paizo. Like Paizo's like real, like their flip mats are like real popular in the industry, but they make some that are just blank textures of like grass and water and dirt and cave with like no walls or details on it. And then you can actually throw 3D elements onto those maps, and then you have the grid and the benefit of all of the 3D and crafting and like real enhancements that you can do on there. And budget's a real thing, but this is a hobby that the less budget you have, the more opportunity you get. Like a humongous part of the actual like crafty side of the RPG industry, like your DM Scotty approach is like getting double corrugated cardboard and dollar store foam core and scissors and Elmer's glue and craft paint from Walmart. And with like a budget of like $10, you can build like an incredible display piece for your games that will look as good as any Dwarven Forge you ever put on it. As long as you're willing to put in the time and effort and just like elbow grease, you can absolutely blow away your players with no money, no budget needed, and get it done. In fact, the most expensive thing on your table is going to be your miniatures, because those are getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. And with 3D printers, thank God for 3D printers, like pennies a piece now. But when I was first starting, that was like the barriers. Like I can craft whole castles and dungeons and terrains and canyons and stuff out of cardboard, foam core, craft paint, and a prayer. But getting those 10 soldiers, those were $5 a piece no matter what you did. So that was where the budget had to go.
You ever use the bag of Army Men? That's something I did back in the day, was you get the plastic bag of World War II soldiers, and you had green, brown, and gray, and they had to be, but you know, they stood up on a grid as like, here's your guy, here's your guy, here's your monster, that kind of thing. Also, like, because you're talking about budget, right? Like what you could do. And the first thing that popped in my mind were like the old, or the, you also go to the dollar store and you get the bag of dinosaurs. For, like you immerse yourself into the crafting 5-year-old world, and you will like, ooh, here's zoo animals. Oh, there's a rhino. There's this. There's like, there's a lot you can drop on a board. You were talking about the Paizo flip mats. I have the wilderness set that I'd used for like my 5-minute run in Kingmaker, and that kind of fell apart. But for you, it sounds like it's not the end result, it's the journey. You really enjoy the actual aspect of, like, so some people that enjoy DM prep and then they do their show or they do their session, right? You really enjoy the actual execution, A, B, C, D, E, F, G to finished product of the crafting.
Yeah, I love the making. Like the making and figuring out how you're going to make something is absolutely as much of my enjoyment of this hobby as the actual storytelling and time at the table. Like when I wanted to put together my Game Master book, I'm not going to settle for a Mead 5-star notebook. I'm going to get the leather crafting tools out and custom make my own tome, and then get into Photoshop and design the custom templates and go into Staples and buy the parchment paper instead of just standard grid paper. So when I sit down at the game table, it looks like I'm throwing a spell book at the table, but no, that's all my game notes. When I hand out, I'm the kind of DM that like bakes the printer paper stained in coffee in the oven so that you get like an actual authentic looking parchment that the quest notes are written on. And and that's and coming up with this stuff is part of the fun. It's like I do enjoy like learning how other people do it. Like I mentioned DM Scotty, which is a great YouTube channel that's all about this crafting. Black Magic Craft is another YouTube channel that's all about crafting on a budget, like crafting on zero budget really, and making all this stuff yourself. But I like learning the techniques and the puzzling and the problem solving of, I want a decrepit old windmill. How am I going to do that? Well, I'm going to need some balsa wood and popsicle sticks and foam core and tissue paper that I'm going to stain with coffee and drape across the windmill blade so that it looks realistic. And am I going to be able to actually get those blades to turn? Well, if I get a good spare pencil and shave it down with a craft knife, maybe. Like, coming up with the solutions and inventing it, and something going from your head to the table, and then getting to see your player's reaction when you slap that thing down on the table, and it just looks amazing, and their miniatures are running in and around and on it, and they're playing with it. That is so much of the fun, and that's why that's kind of like where semi-professionally I got my start in the industry, because like my very first industry job was helping out with Fat Dragon Games, making the cut files for their papercraft terrain. Like, now everybody's got 3D printers and stuff for that, but I really enjoyed, like, you print out textures on cardstock and then you fold it up and just right, and you get a building that looks awesome. You get a dungeon, you can get a beholder. Like, paper standees works great for when you've got no budget. I never got into the army men side of things except for like to practice on, but I did totally use dollar store dinosaurs with sculpey wings to be dragons when I was wee little and couldn't afford miniatures.
Well, let's say you spent your week on building that castle, and it's like, I haven't even started on the monster. Like, that solution I came up with was something, I guess what I'm getting at is like mixing and matching, right? Like, you are enjoying yourself taking the time to craft this stuff, but will it be ready in a week for your session? Let's assume everyone plays once a week. Will it be ready in a week? Or are you looking for something that's like the end of the book? It's like, well, if I start building this now, by the time they get to the end of the adventure, your crafting project will be ready. But you are spending the time, they say like, love what you do and then you won't work a day in your life. If you really love crafting this stuff, time goes by, you're having a ball. Doesn't matter how much time it takes. But what I meant by the interjecting of like cheap stuff or whatever, I guess a better question to ask you is, or how you'd go about this would be, remember I was talking about the sort of interest level, enjoyment level, passion level, obsession level. Let's dial it down to the interest level. So if someone is just interested in having something aesthetic at their table, and we send them to the kids' glue aisle,
right?
You know what I mean? Like what you started off in the beginning, right? And you're throwing in your little war minis or whatever, that type of thing. What would you recommend, or what do you think works well? Okay, so we've always mentioned Scotty's channel.
DM Scotty.
DM Scotty. No, that's DM Scotty on YouTube. Like, just so we can direct, or you want to throw the link up there and I'll put it in.
I do not have those links at hand, and I have a very loud keyboard. You don't want me to try.
Okay, so let's assume that someone can Google or go into the YouTube search. So you're on YouTube and you're searching DM Scotty crafting.
Right.
That'll take them where they want to go.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. DM Scotty and Black Magic Craft are the two big ones to go for.
Black Magic Craft, and these guys specialize in low budget solutions.
Oh yeah. Like, they start with cardboard and foam core that you can buy at the dollar store. And craft paint. Like, that's the hobby, the crafter hobby of the RPG industry. Like, yeah, you can go big. You can, like, I'm bringing in my Proxon hot wire cutter and my laser forge, and yeah, but like, they really revel in, I built this out of excess jewelry charms and a spare penny and a toilet roll and a stick I found in my garden. And it looks like the most incredible piece of bespoke terrain you've ever seen. And I love that MacGyver angle to this. So, like, if you're just got an interest level, I think like building a basic set of dungeon tiles for your first craft is a great option. Or just like doing like props to hand out to your players, like that handwritten note on parchment that you baked in the oven is a great like trick that is going to get a lot of bang for your buck, and it takes like 5 seconds of your time, and that's easy enough to get ready for your game night. those giant like set pieces stuff, you do need to kind of plan that stuff in advance. You know, like at the end of this book, there's going to be a fortress, and I'm going to craft the throne room that they're going to have the big bad fight in. And I plan for those like big bespoke moments, like months or weeks in advance, so that I have enough time to get that craft done. But honestly, I like to also work fast and bash this stuff out quickly. So like it doesn't take nearly as much time as it might look or seem like it does. So like a couple of hours and I can make a building.
Well, that's cool. I mean, I guess you got to pick your moments, right? Like there's the adventures usually have, sometimes they get to a moment in the adventure where like, well, here's the handout for this, you know, when the king hands them the note, right? And you're saying, pick that moment, bake your oven 5 minutes. Here's the handout, has the impact, because the players will pass it around. And even though while the DM is going on about like what it says or that type of thing, they'll have this physical like lying on the table. When you describe the spell book as your notes, right? If you have that sitting just outside the screen where they can constantly look at that tooled leathering, I'd say that's immersive. Like the players are trying to remove themselves from your kitchen table, look down in the grid, get into character, and immerse themselves in your story and props, as well as like crafting minis and walls type of thing for their characters. Because you got to remember, the prop is for the player. Right? And the minis and everything are for the character, right? My character's here. I envision my character standing next to the waterfall. A very nice naked lady gives me a sword, called it Excalibur. Thank you for the sword. Type of it, right? And that's their character. But for the player, right? You didn't hand them a spell book. You just have DM notes that look like a spell book. You know, or I guess the old school rule would be like, you know, the DM that shows up in the wizard's hat and the robes. It's it's kind of I'm trying to find a polite word. It's kind of a shake your hand or face palm. Thank you. Face your palm thing to do. Now, my daughter's wedding, the MC showed up in a tux that matched the groom. But when he did the intro, because my daughter and her husband are big nerds like me, he came back full Gandalf. I kid you not. My family, his family, dude came back full Gandalf. He's only like 26, right? So the beard and everything that he had was really great. Anyway, he comes in with the staff and shuffles up to the podium. And, you know, like there's a handful of geeks and nerds within your circle of 50 to 100 people, right? If you're lucky, right? So there's 20 of us just killing ourselves laughing and giving him the thumbs up like, this is so awesome. The rest of the family was stunned and confused. But I'll tell you this. Ask anyone about the wedding speech. What do you remember about the last wedding you're at? I guarantee you'll remember every word Gandalf said, because the guy just had that impact, right? Because he had the prop. And I'm assuming this is the point that you're trying to make. It works anywhere, not just at the gaming table. Something Immersive Chat here is asking a couple questions. About music. Now, this is something I'm big on. Whether you pay a subscription to Sirenscape or myself, I have a relationship with tabletopaudio.com. Not just because they're free. I'm actually one of their patrons because I really believe in what this guy's doing. Puts down these 10-minute ambient tracks that you could just play quietly in the background. Preferably at negative 45 decibels for those of you in the know. Do you, besides physical to touch and something to see, do you use anything audio in your games?
I absolutely do. Yeah. I loved Sirenscape, still love Sirenscape. They're still one of the sponsors of one of my podcast adventures. So I have to say that anytime I'm praising them, or else the FTC gets grumpy at me.
Link below. Right?
But so like I keep a portable speaker underneath my game table so that I can play music and sound effects. And I do use Sirenscape. I use the old Midnight Collection D&D official soundtrack when that was new, and I do like to add that sort of ambiance to the table. Like most recently, I just installed this big screen and notice that it's not flat on my table. It's hanging at the end of the table, and that's so that when the time comes, I can throw visuals and animations and like splash animations and stuff up for my players to look at during the game, so that it adds to the game instead of like gets in the way and tries to interfere with the game. So I'm not opposed to like bringing in tech and cool aspects like that to the table. I just don't want it to replace like the handwritten notes and the actual physical props and sort of immersion tools that we also use. So yeah.
Yeah, both have their place. I mean, honestly, the last in-house game I ran was several years ago, and I did exactly that. I parked myself like a little pop-up kitchen table for guests, you know, the kiddie table.
Mm-hmm.
I dug that out, and I moved furniture, and I sat underneath the large television. And I put, you know, what the DM or the player should see with Roll20 or Fantasy Grounds on it. And then when you do the pop-up, the art of the NPC, and you get into character and you're playing that NPC, they look above your head, and there's the guy or monster in full glory right there. And the players loved it. They were like, that is so, you know, wow, you're even making the face the guy makes. And I'm like, yeah, well, not like I spent the entire car ride over here practicing. Yeah, something like that. But
one of my favorite prop wins related to that is when Starfinder had just come out, and Paizo asked me to go do some convention work with one of the local cons to kind of, you know, build up some local enthusiasm for the game. I ran the intro adventure, and I made little paper bag puppets of all the NPCs, so that when the game was running, I would hold up like the alien with 6 arms and go, "Thank you. Please deliver this holograph tape to." And it was every player that ever played in that game that I ran that convention. I must have run that game 7 times during that convention. Absolutely just got a cackle the second the hand puppets came out.
Oh my god! Well, that's original. And like I said, something I've noticed in the last 10 years is making tabletop RPGs for younger than like the virtual box at 8 to 12, and it was like I don't know anybody under 14 that played this game, but parents are introducing like wee ones. You hear about teachers talking to students, and the idea is to get the creative juices flowing. Like tabletop RPGs bring so much to the experience, to joy, to hobby, to crafting. You know, inspire them to have confidence in a group, inspire crazy GMs like myself to test their audio ability in editing and in voice acting, if one can call that what I do. Probably not. And you talked about like hand puppet. Like, I guess the point I'm trying to make here is like, that's amazing. Who cares if you brought something that you would expect for a child to a bunch of adults or tweens or whatever shows up at your convention? The point comes across that this isn't me. This is who you're talking to at the moment. And it literally is a face or reference besides your own that they can sort of shift to.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. And it is also, there's a lot of awkwardness, especially at convention games. So when you start throwing props or like little gimmicks like that, it breaks that tension and then immediately tells everybody, hey, we're allowed to have some fun right now. Where you don't have to worry. Like the GM is literally holding a sock puppet up. You can goof off and crack jokes, and nobody's going to judge you.
Well, that's cool. So, what about crafting for like a convention? Let's take the interest level off to like up to, you know, like a well, see, you don't have to be a professional to go to a convention. You know, you don't have to be a pro to go or register. Do you?
No, you don't. Absolutely not. You can totally do it as like a fan. And there's in every game, especially if it's not like first, yes, absolutely, D&D and Pathfinder are looking for volunteers to go and play. But if your favorite game that you want to play at a convention or help out at a convention is like, you know, not one of the big 2, they are absolutely going to appreciate somebody wanting to help out and run tables and stuff. So if you want to get involved there, that's up. And if you're just showing up to run a game at a convention, it's a great time to I like to use that as my opportunity to bring my A game. So like I will like custom sculpt the dungeon into foam core completely and bring that with me to the table with all the props and the coins and the stuff, because like you don't have to like when you're playing week to week, you have to pace yourself. It's like, okay, so what can I do this week that's going to have enough impact? What can I do that's going to be reusable week to week? I don't have to bring my A game every single time. I can just save it for the big moments. But at a convention, this is like 4 hours of everybody traveled, everybody like put out. And so I'm always impressed. And so many of the GMs do this too, where they just like, they bring the custom crafted Black Ross Museum with working fountain and LEDs. They bring like the card art and the custom portraits and all the spell cards, and like everything just looks dead on perfect. And you don't have to do that. You can totally just bring and I played at fantastic tables that are just wet erase markers and a dry board and a dry erase board, and that's fine. You can carry it, but a convention is a great time to absolutely bring it if you want to bring it, because you know that I only have to prepare for this 4-hour scripted thing. I can do it. I can, as long as you've got room to carry it in your car, you can bring it, and you're not committing to doing that every single Saturday.
Yeah. Play your strengths. I mean, you go to a convention, you just get away with the whiteboard. How's your Pictionary skills, right? If you're not into the 3D world, what can you do in
Right.
2D? And no one's like I said, no judgment or whatever. Play to your strengths. One thing I like about this community is they have a you do you. If they see that you're enjoying what you're doing, they don't judge the level of its authenticity or a 7 out of 10 or 2 out of 10ness for like results. You know what I mean? Like if your 40-year-old or a 5-year-old puts their heart and soul into that, like you said, sock puppet, they're not gonna like, oh well, one of the sticky rolly eyeballs kind of was a little bit lopsided on Jefferson's hand there. I really not feeling this character. Like no one, like I said, no one's gonna judge you. They're gonna be into it because you're into it. So with the interest level, socks, shoes, sticks, craft, like no apologies, put down your cork that you took out of the mom's wine bottle. Hopefully that won't go stale, because you really need something to be a chest, and take a knife. That's something else I saw, is you take an actual real cork. So buying one, save the corks from the wine bottles. I don't know. Maybe you have lush parents. It could help. Maybe you don't. You got to go buy something at the store. Take an X-Acto knife and shore that sucker up into a little chest or into a little, imagination is the limit. And if you don't find yourself very imaginative, go online. Like you said, GM Scotty and, sorry, what was the other one? Black Magic
Craft.
Black Magic Craft. Give you your own ideas. A lot of people get locked into that. Here's a grid. I need dry erase markers because that is how the game is played. No. I would love to go to a convention and pull out a table with that terrible glossed, imprinted, looks like marble, and it has that horrible 1950s rim of aluminum around it. Pop down a table and like you're a salt shaker. Everybody's a salt shaker, and or chess pieces. You pull out chess pieces from a real chessboard or checkers, whatever you get your hands on that'll fit in that 5x5 square. Slap it down. This is this. And then the foam core comes out. And like I said, if you don't have it all done, I still think people would really appreciate your effort, especially if you say, you built it yourself. When you craft, when you go all in, right? You've gone from glue to foam core. Now you're talking about 3D printing. Let's talk about the 3D printing aspect.
Okay.
And I will definitely, this is something I would like to hear more about from multiple guests. I happen to know someone, Mr. Ryan Messina, is one of our very own cast members who loves using his 3D printer and has the, what did you call it? They have the 2 buckets. You mix them together and you make miniatures. It's powder and a paste.
Oh yeah, the dental stone plaster.
The stone plaster. You put these suckers together. He has all that, and we will have him in an upcoming episode. But for right now, let's talk about your experiences with.
Oh boy, I love 3D printing. I love it so much. I mean, like I love it so much. I started another podcast dedicated to it, Print Your Games podcast, and I love it because what it does is it allows something in your brain to become a physical miniature that looks bespoke and wonderful in your hands. And I wish I had one of my customs handy, but this is a 3D printed miniature. I'm holding up one to the camera. It's a ghoul that I painted. It's lovely and goofy and scary, but like I love that with just a little bit of time with software. It does not take all that much time to learn basic 3D sculpting and 3D modeling. You whatever wild idea in your brain can just come out looking like a professional level product in your hands a moment later. There was a one point in time when Ryan was making fun of me a little bit of jest, where I was designing my own custom halfling soldiers that was kit bashed from like 18 different miniatures and a bunch of stuff I was making myself. And then I was printing them out, and then I was painting them with paint I made out of my own myself, like pigments and medium, and just like nothing off the shelf, just like making my own paints and painting it up, and then putting them out onto the tables. And he was like, you've basically become your own game manufacturer at this point, Perram. What are you doing? And it was fun to experience that, and it's very much true. So what I love that 3D printing, like if you have that creative itch, if you have that willingness to learn a new skill, you can actually, this is very, very much becomes a craft when you're making it yourself, like when you're designing your own files or customizing files or kit bashing or any of that stuff. Then it is very much part of the crafting hobby and stuff. And if you don't have those skills yet, then there's like tons and tons and tons of resources out there with stuff that anybody can put together and print. And one of my favorite things to print isn't even like complete buildings and stuff, but like, have you ever heard of a greeble?
A greeble?
Yeah, a greeble.
No, I have not.
So in Hollywood, greebles are what prop and stage producers, like the people that make the stuff you see on screen in Hollywood, the little techie bits and details and like, or like the little bumpy bits on buildings and stuff, those are called greebles. And one of the things you can 3D print and find are just like little like greebles and stuff that you can add to your custom buildings, so like ductworks and windows and barrels and flowers and vines and broken wheelbarrows and stuff, which are not things that you would use on their own so much as like little fiddly bits that you can glue to stuff you're crafting yourself. And so with 3D printing, there's so much of the community has come together to basically become a multiplier about what's possible in the world now. So you're no longer limited as to what like a handful of professional companies that have managed to eke out a living in this very niche market we have. But now like every fan and artist with a creative bent can like create something that can become a product that looks just as good as if you bought it at the store, that you can just have in a few hours.
I asked this man for 3 to 30 minutes, and we've gone into overtime. I think we need to have you back talking with Ryan Messina strictly about 3D printing, or you could just go to Jefferson's show. What was the name of that show again?
Print Your Games.
Print Your Games. And where can we find that show?
printyourgames.com.
printyourgames.com. I want to thank Jefferson J. Thacker, for being on the show, being one of my first guests and doing an awesome job and being quite enthusiastic and passionate and not skipping a beat. And I feel like we've only covered a smattering of the crafting world. Stick around if you wish, Jefferson, because I'm going to bring on my next guest. As I wrap up this episode, let's talk to Katie. Are you there, Katie? Also known as Little Red Dot.
Hey, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Hey, great. It's Chelsea.
Chelsea. Sorry. I see Katie in the thing and I've clicked on the wrong one. Chelsea, bringing you another Attack of Opportunity guest back from the fold. Let's pull up your video, and as I end this episode, and we'll of course begin yours, as a teaser to episode next, what do you want to rave about and are passionate about in the RPG world today?
So I'm going to be honest, I'm a little passionate right now about dark storytelling, the dark tales of the TTRPG world, and how we actually find a great amount of empathy and self in how we tell dark stories in a safe place.
All right. Well, then you're going to have to stay tuned, and we will see you next time on RAVE RPG.